Hi.
Hi, how are you? I'm Alina.
I'm Mona, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for sending me this paper ahead of time. A lot of students don't do that, and we're like stuck reading 20 pages in like a minute, so it's really helpful. Yeah. So I see you're taking organic chemistry with Dr. Smith.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I really like him. I had to do a lab for him, and basically I just wanted to bring it in because I'm a little worried about the format and my material. I just don't know if it's really what he's looking for, so I just wanted you to look over it. That would be okay.
Well, it's actually really good because I had Dr. Smith last semester, so I kind of know like what he's looking for and all that kind of stuff. But there's some shady ground that we could get into, like with having the same professor and like same information and stuff. So I just want you to know that I can't really help you with your findings and kind of like let you know like what's more applicable in the situation just because I know the information. So what we're going to do is concentrate on the structure, the format, your findings, and see how we can all make it work so like the argument makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Does that sound okay for you?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great, cool. As you can see from that last scene, there's a very thin moral line where a tutor can definitely cross having the same academic background as her writer or the student. So in this case, you have to be sure to take a step back from the information, look at the writing, and concentrate on specific things like structure and organization, and try not to get too involved in the academic background. So while there are some benefits of having a background in the situation, because you can definitely like let them know where some inconsistencies are, it's really, really necessary to take a step back from that and make sure you deal with the writing and not so much the information. Okay, so this is really great. I really, really like your introduction. I think you provide a lot of good direction for your reader, and you have a really strong thesis. And I think overall, like, you definitely provide everything that's pretty much necessary in an introduction. I think maybe you could go a little further and maybe say like what the significance of your thesis is, maybe in the introduction, but you can always do that in the conclusion too. So it's really up to you what you want to do with that introduction.
Okay, great. I'm really excited Alina had Dr. Smith as a professor too, because last time I brought in a lab report, my tutor didn't even know where to start. Like, they didn't know anything, and you know, I really am just really nervous about what this professor is expecting, and it's helpful that Alina's had this professor before. So in this paragraph I talk about my limiting reagent, and I just don't know if I discuss it correctly, if it's clear what I'm talking about. I mean the limiting reagent is pretty important, and so I just wanted to make sure I came across clearly what I'm trying to talk about.
Well, I think in this paragraph, you make it very clear what your limiting reagent is and how it works and what the characteristics of it are. So I think actually you don't really need to spend that much time talking about all the specific characteristics, because I think your professor is going to kind of know like what the specific reagent does and what its characteristics are. So while I think you need to put in the major points, I think you have addressed everything that needs to be addressed.
So you think I could take some stuff out about it?
Yeah, I think if you're looking to cut some of the length of the paper, you could definitely cut maybe a sentence or two out, but I think you have the most important points down about your limiting reagent. I think that's the most important part to remember.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, so when I was reading through this paragraph, I thought that, you know, this sentence is a little bit awkward, maybe because of the transition. So do you think that we could find a transition that might serve the purpose of the sentence a little better?
I'm trying to connect the two sentences because I thought the second one was a cause of the first one. So, I don't know, could I say, like, therefore?
Yeah, I think therefore would definitely work in this situation because you're definitely connecting it to the sentence before, and you're making it clear that this is a cause. So this is where the moral line gets a little unclear, because in Mona's paper I start reading a little bit of some calculation errors. So I don't know here if I can address those calculation issues and tell her, look, your paper isn't taking into account specific areas that need to be taken account for. But at the same time, that's because I know the background of the information. If I didn't, all I would address is the writing and what the information is on the paper. So as a tutor, I need to remember that the calculations is not my department. So I need to look at the writing and make sure it's clear where she's going with the argument. So while her calculations are totally incorrect, I can't really address that point in the paper. Okay, so you said you wanted to concentrate on effectively conveying your findings and making it clear to your professor what your argument is. So I think right here you have a little bit of issues because you just kind of use the verb to react very much throughout your entire paper. So I think what we need to do is maybe look through some of them, and I can point out some first, and then you can go through your paper again and try to find where you use the word reacting and see if you can find maybe something that would work a little bit better or be like a similar verb for
Well,
the word.
I mean, like, it's kind of hard to find a synonym for the word reacting because, I mean, it is a science paper, and I feel like you should know that as well since you took this class.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't really know.
Okay, well, I think, for instance, a word that I use a lot instead of reacting is maybe like synthesizing. So maybe you can think of synthesis and kind of use that instead of reacting sometimes. And then you can always use a thesaurus to try to find some other words that may be applicable. So all I'm saying is I think you should maybe read through the whole paper again, underline where reacting is, and see if you can find something that may be able to replace it. And if you can't, then that's just, how the paper is going to be. But if you can, I think it'll just be really easier for the reader to engage in your paper if she sees a little bit of a difference with, like, the words that are used.
Okay.
Okay? Also, I think kind of further down in this paper, I kind of see some overusage of transitions and a little bit of weird usages of transitions. So when you have a contrasting statement, like you're acknowledging something and then you want to show that it's actually the opposite of that, instead of using in addition, which kind of adds like a continuance of that idea, you kind of want to use something that's a little bit more contrasting. So what's a transition you think that could convey like a difference, like a contrast?
Like, however?
Yeah, however works, that's a really good idea. So like specifically in this case, I think you should use, instead of in addition, you should use however.
Yeah, okay, I see how that works.
Does that make sense? So I think if you like read through your paper again and just try to make it clear like where your contrasts are, where your continuances are, and look at your transitions and see if they're totally applicable in the situation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that works really well. Cool. Okay, so thank you so much. I mean, everything's been really helpful so far, but now just regarding my conclusion, I mean, I just want to make sure it puts everything together, discusses everything in the paper that I discussed, and just, I want to make sure that it's clear and basically an effective conclusion. I definitely want my professor to finish reading this paper and thinking that was a good paper. I understood everything. And so, what do you think about how my conclusion is?
Well, I think you really do address the main points of your paper and you bring it all together in a very cohesive paragraph. And I think that's a great thing. And just like we were talking about with the introduction, I think your conclusion can take it a step further. So you can say, okay, so these are my findings, and these findings like apply to the real world, to more science things than just what I'm talking about. So maybe connect it to something like biology or something that's a little bit outside of your specific discipline, and kind of taking it a step further. That could just like kind of give your professor this overall arching feeling that yeah, she knows what she's talking about and she's connecting it to the real world. So that's like just something you could add. But I think if you're just trying to restate your ideas and kind of make it clear what your argument was, I think you do that pretty effectively.
Okay, great. Sounds really good.
Yeah, it was really great.
I'm really glad how the tutorial went. I think Alina helped me out a lot. She definitely, I guess I thought it would help a lot more, the fact that she had the same professor, but really like she was focusing on my writing, which I really appreciated because it's going to help me a lot more in my future papers. So she definitely helped me with some of the words that I had, some of my transition words that I had problems with. And I think overall my paper sounds a lot more clear and it's a lot more convincing. So I'm really glad of how everything turned out.
So this was a bit difficult for me as a tutor, having the same background as my writer. But I think overall I did step back from the discipline. I stepped back and I tried to address the writing in the paper instead of the information that was placed in front of me. So while it was really difficult to not address all the calculation errors that were in Mona's paper and other things that the findings didn't really make a lot of sense from the information, like the actual like numbers and stuff from the paper, I think her argument makes a lot of sense and the organization of her paper makes a lot of sense. And while those things may be a little bit of an issue, overall I think the writing and the paper are much better now that I've looked through it as opposed to what she gave me.